Jenkins, there is Henderson. Betts can't quite close. Blitzarves, Taylor. Douglas did really well. Betts dangerous here. All very dangerous. Cameron first goal. First goal of the prelim. The big body around the clearances will be handy. Betts. Oh yeah. How's this? Can you believe this start? To deal with, and the Crouch brothers, they're both in there. Walker, Lonergan, they just want it more. What a brilliant save from Walker. Top of the square. Geelong under enormous pressure. Seedsman off the ground. Got it. So much pressure. It just kept coming and coming and coming. Seedsman kicks his second, and they go berserk. Archers at red. Good looking ball. Dangerfield knocked it out in front of Selwood. Dangerfield looks like he's out cold. Crouch. You get the feeling at a 35-point margin with Cameron. And it's going to get away, and Cameron with a sensational grab looking at goal number 4.
He is putting on a show.
Okay, Sloan took the mark, thought it might have been out. He bangs it in Walker's direction. Betts at the back. Eddie held on to. Ball coming loose. Jenkins kicks the goal. Jenkins mops it up. Do you know what? They're on their way to the G. They're on their way to the... A hard-running McKay with a couple of bounces. Can he get it over the back? A beautiful kick to his captain. And then Walker with that. Look at that kick. Kicked it about 70 metres. Cameron nearly. He's going to kick 5. He's going to kick 5. He has. He's been more than a handful. He's been the star of the night. It's been 19 long years, but Adelaide are in the grand final.
Oh my goodness, what a start to tonight's show there. Thanks very much for that little montage, Fiend. It was fantastic, and aren't we all incredibly excited? Welcome to the Tuesday Night Live AFL Crowcast Grand Final Edition. Couldn't be more excited tonight to bring you this podcast. Cast of thousands, of course, we've got tonight, all ganging up to bring you all of the news and chat with the big game coming up on Saturday. Usual panelists, Nikki, Macca and Fiend, how are we, guys?
Good, thank you.
I'm doing well.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, Fiend's a little bit cooked there, and we've got a special guest, of course, the host of the Thursday night preview edition, Scorps. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Just thought I'd come in and for Phoenix, who's apparently ludicrously sick.
Yeah, Scorpus is going to be my replacement tonight. I won't be saying a hell of a lot.
All right, mate. Well, we appreciate you turning up to do all the tech stuff for us. And once again, thanks for that montage at the start. It was fantastic. Gets everybody in the mood, gets everybody fired up.
One thing that I do need to or there's a couple of things that I do need to do before I shut up, Pete. First of all, I think we all need to eat humble pie because we all thought the Crows was shit after last season, and when we got found out at the beginning of after our 6-game run, we all jumped off really quick. So we probably need to eat some humble pie and accept that organic growth actually was a thing.
Not me.
Oh, shut up, you.
I'm with you, Phoenix. I thought organic growth was bullshit.
Yeah. So credit where it's due, the club have done a great job and certainly exceeded my expectations. But more importantly, Pete, this.
It's a grand old flag, it's a high-flying flag, it's the emblem for me and for you. It's the emblem of...
Macca, did we hear enough of this on Sunday?
I didn't know Melbourne won anything.
Just for your benefit, Pete, because I know you would have missed it on Sunday, and I know it would have been something that you would have been very pleased about. So there you go.
Thanks, mate. I did have an invite to go to the Granny on Sunday, and I thought long and hard about it. And when it occurred to me that we're probably I'd be sitting amongst two of the most irritating supporter bases nationally, possibly even internationally. I elected to paint my daughter's bedroom, and I was very, very happy with that decision.
Wise decision, I thought, yeah.
Vastly amusing there, Pete.
But as much as I'd love to talk about Sturton Port, I think we'll throw to a little bit of Nikki's news. Nikki will probably, depending on how much you got there, we might just try and briefly run through it. We've got so much Crow stuff. It's grand final week, and I guess there's just one or two things going on around the AFL.
I was sitting there at work today thinking about this because normally I troll through all the newspapers and grab a little thing, see what I can find. And I just sat there and thought, do we really care what anybody else is doing? Because we're in the grand final. But there is just a smidge of things. So we've actually finally had confirmation that Gazza has requested a return home to Gold Coast and from Gold Coast to Geelong, and Gold Coast have returned fire and gone, we'll have Mitch Duncan, thanks. Do we really? We're all pretty sure that's going to happen. The AFL will make it happen, even though they don't have any first-round draft picks.
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah, they're not getting Mitch Duncan, though.
It's fair enough, though. I mean, poor old Gaz, he wants to go home. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, he's given great service, and he's homesick, and he wants to go home. He wants to be at Geelong. We can all understand that.
Oh, totally.
Absolute vomit worthy. I just don't think that he should be. If I was Gold Coast, I'd just stand my ground on the issue, because he had a front-ended loaded contract. He's taken the big money up front. Now he's got on to the smaller money. He wants to go home. All of a sudden he's homesick and wants to go home to Geelong. And if Geelong want him, I'd either say no or squeeze the living daylights out of Geelong for something very, very decent.
I just say straight out no and force the prick into retirement. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say that, because I have no opinion left of Gary at all. I think Gary let his team down very sadly this year, in my opinion. Anyhow, on the limited knowledge I've got, he may have genuine reasons for all of his dropping out all the time, but it seemed to me it just seemed to be at his own whim and fancy. And for him to want to piss off back to Geelong, I've had a gut full of the guy.
And as DSG in the chat's pointed out, if he wants to return home, he can retire.
Next.
So there was a awards thingy on last night. Some dude took it out. Well done on Dusty Martin on a fantastic season. Well-deserved Brownlow. A few little interesting things came out of it that people don't like. That fans should be able to vote on mark and goal of the year because they pretty much got it wrong because they were big fan bases. I do think in terms of the goal of the year, it was very interesting that there was actually more votes. Well, Rioli, I think, was 43% or 48%, somewhere around there. He was in the 40s, and Eddie got 33% of the vote. And Buddy's goal that shouldn't have actually been a goal because of running too far, I only got 26. So I wonder if that was a bit of a backlash from people, that they all kind of knew that, yeah, they ran too far.
Well, certainly I didn't consider it for that very reason that you said, Nicky, because when you look at and see the guys run it, he's certainly covered at least 50 metres or more, and only bounced the ball once. I just can't see how you can accept it. So, and obviously I voted for Eddie, but, the other guys won it, and fair enough. He got the most votes, so he wins.
Bit of scuttlebutt around that. There was some harsh words going on between Mark Murphy and Bryce Gibbs. Did anyone catch hold of that one?
No, I didn't hear that.
And then followed up by Channel 7 report, a Melbourne report saying that the trade between Adelaide and Carlton has been agreed. That was Channel 7 Melbourne tonight.
I didn't hear it quite as advanced as you had it there, Pete, and I'm interested in that. But I did hear that there were words between the skipper of Carlton and Gibbs, and it may well be for the very reason that you're talking about.
Can't exactly blame Gibbs. He wants to come to an actually successful club, and good on him.
Oh, no, come on. He's, a contract's a contract, isn't it? You should, they should be made to stay where they are. They shouldn't be running home all the time. And no, look, contract's a contract. He signed a contract, and good on Carlton for sticking to their guns.
I do believe there was a wee bit of sarcasm.
I'm only being sarcastic, mate. You're spot on.
Yeah, that's just kind of ridiculous. Those kind of things.
This is the ridiculous narrative that will go on. It'll be good on Carlton for sticking to their guns and let poor Gazza come home.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing is Simon's just pointed it out. So the AFL Coaches Association awards were tonight. And what happens is after the preliminary finals, all the AFL coaches, which includes the assistant coaches as well as all head coaches, do a 3-2-1 on their coaches of the year. And it was a very actually narrow victory for Damien Hardwick. He scored 294 votes, beating Pike out, Don Pike, of 283 votes. So only 11 votes difference between the pair of them. And in very distant third at 72 points was Longmire.
Well, you know, it doesn't get you a flag, so it doesn't really matter in my book. It might matter to Pikey that he didn't get as much credit as he deserves, but I don't think he's that type of bloke that would worry about it anyhow. Just on those, when we talk about the goal and the mark of the year before, the mark of the year was the big joke, Nicky. There's no way on the God's earth that mark of Danaher equaled any one of about 6 that Jeremy Howe took.
For me, Charlie Cameron's mark was actually better than Danaher's because he got just as high. It was a very similar mark. And he's half the size of the bloke, jumping just as high. And I'm talking about the mark he took up in Darwin, which actually never even won its round. They've talked about it should go back. These should go back to being judged by a panel. But the problem is the panel is subjective, and you do get some wrong decisions sometimes then as well.
Yeah, the panel would probably be someone like, Cameron Ling, Basil Zemplis, those sort of guys that just end up picking, Danaher for everything because they just love him. So, I guess the public thinks the same way and they just made the wrong choice on that one pretty clearly.
And I'm sorry if I've had a few supporters having got me in some other areas. The disgrace in the AFL is Texas Mo. Have a look at Joe Danaher's.
Who said about Texas Mo being a disgrace?
Oh, there's a few of them. That's what they like to pick on him for. He's obviously not a good player because his moustache is dodgy.
Oh, he doesn't look like a porn star like some of them do.
What do we think of just our guys? I thought Rory Atkins was a bit of a surprise with 10 votes. Source polled pretty well. I thought he polled quite nicely. I think he got 10 odd votes. And Slaney, of course, regardless of all the hoo-ha about the tagging, still had a really good season. And I think
I was a little
21.
Yeah, I was a little worried that Rory took the wrong Rory as his date. Because he took Rory Laird, and of course Atkins is getting all the votes. And I love that the club actually tweeted out a picture of Rory Laird, took the photo of it and actually tagged Atkins in it, and we just went, where were you, kind of thing. But
I just found it a bit ridiculous that the 4th and 7th highest polling players in the competition couldn't make the All-Australian squad in Josh Kennedy from Sydney and Rory Sloane. Didn't make the team, but pulled very well in the Brown, though.
Very, very nice point, and one that I was going to jump on. The fact that Sloaney, we're now looking at, and you need to refresh my memory here, but I reckon he was, 3rd in the Coaches Association?
Yeah, even with that
5th in the Players Association award, and now, 5th in the Brownlow, and he can't get a All-Australian Guernsey. It is just astonishing, and again, you're spot on, Scorpus, the Josh Kennedy as well. Just goes to show the idiocy of the All-Australian selectors this year.
And just on the voting by the umpires, Matt Crouch, surely is somebody that would have caught the eye quite a lot, but because of his the nature of the game he played, which is very hard-working, etc., rather than the flashy, it did take them some time during the year to recognise that this boy is actually going very well indeed. So, although I reckon he underperformed in the sense of the votes that he received for his efforts. I think that next year, at least, he'll once they start to recognise you, then you start to get votes.
I think that's right. I think it takes a year or two to get into calculations. I thought the funny one was round. I think it was round 22. It was with Geelong and Collingwood, and Dangerfield's got 32 possessions, 2 goals, 12 clearances, and with chocolate on top, and has not polled a vote in that game. I just wonder, do they think to themselves, oh, we really don't want to have that whole thing where he wins the Brownlow and, we just won't give him votes. I mean, would you put it past them?
Well, you do have to wonder, because in that particular game, he got the maximum vote from each of the two coaches in the game, who obviously are reasonably good judges. And even though umpires can run around like blind mice at times, surely they can obviously see somebody like Dangerfield buzzing around the oval. So, yeah, it does sort of instigate in one's mind a conspiracy type theory that perhaps we better not give him votes just to make sure he doesn't get too many.
Well, it was very interesting. They highlighted that on AFL 360 tonight, Macca, where they showed all the a number of the other votes from the media for that particular game. And it was the same 4 players, not always in the same thing. Danger was most of the time was at the top, but a couple he was actually named second best. But it was Dangerfield, Duncan, Meningola, and Taylor Adams from Collingwood. Now, take Dangerfield out. They're the 3 that ended up actually as the 3-2-1. So he was around the mark for most of the others. Well, actually, clearly better in most of them. But yeah, that it was a little bit interesting on that one. But just going back on the Matt Crouch thing, he talks back to the umpires too much, and he talks back very aggressively. So if people think he's going to get more votes next year, maybe not. It took Tomo a very long time to finally get votes that he deserved, because he's of that same ilk, and the umpires don't like it if you're that aggressive in talking back.
Just talking on umpires, for the umpires for the game, one of the 3 umpires is a gentleman called Umpire Ryan. Is he not the guy that slaughtered us in one particular game this year, when there was something like about 15 frees for one side that we were playing and one for us?
Yeah, that was Geelong round 18. He was the umpire there, and he carved us up big time.
Yeah, so he's obviously not one of our lovers. So I'm a little bit alarmed at that one.
We still won that game though.
I think he's a Geelong supporter though, isn't he? Isn't that the reason why he might have favoured them heavily in that match?
Yes, well, that's how the one thing in our favour is the fact that he is a Geelong supporter, and his bias was very, very heavy in that game.
One of the other news items that I guess it's kind of a news item was the whole drama which surrounded ticketing for the AFL Grand Final. I know that sort of occupied a lot of people's thoughts after the game on Friday night. Thoughts and attention turned quickly to the issue of ticketing and how we would get to the Grand Final. And I must say I've been very, very fortunate to get 4 tickets, so that's great. I know, Nikki, you're going as well. Did anybody on the panel have that experience, and anything that you want to add to the Ticketek process?
Well, my wife's not well enough to go, so I allowed another couple to use my tickets to get the tickets to the Grand Final, and they did get them. And but I think if you had paid the gold, you automatically got them, didn't you?
You did. There's a lot of people complaining that yes, they got their tickets, but some of the categories they were pretty disappointed with, I think.
I mean, yeah, because that's the whole thing. It is a ballot. The issue is that when it's supposed to be best available goes first through the priority 1, which is what gold membership are. And then when you find out people who are in the priority 2 batch have got category 1 tickets. So how can it actually be all the best availables go first to the priority 1s when priority 2 are getting them? And you have blocks where you have people who have only wanted 2 tickets together, and then they find out they're up in the nosebleeds, and somebody who's a priority 2 has got a category 1 down the front. I mean, it's actually it's a lot nicer for your bank balance, but it is ridiculous that they did that kind of system. What I disliked, and I think it's what's impacted most people, is that you got the credit card coming out. You kind of knew that you had it because money came off your credit card.
Correct.
But for some people on some bank accounts, it wasn't showing up. And so all they're doing is stressing absolutely stressing. The AFL and Ticketek have apparently put this in because it's a much easier system. Everybody will know. And I think it's actually worked out to be more stressful in the end because even though the money then comes out on your credit card, you still have to wait for Monday for your email to say, yeah, here it is, and your confirmation, because there's still that worry sitting in your gut like, okay, maybe the money's come out, but something could stuff up in between because you've got no control over it. I think that's where the issue is. And PJ Crows has said the same issues that we had regarding Priority 1 and Priority 2 and best available seats has happened with Richmond members.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I'm not sure quite what the capacity of the MCG now is. I don't know whether it's 98 or 100 or whatever.
It is 100.
If it is 100, right. 34 out of 100 is pretty piss poor, I think, for two teams' members to be able to go, which means 2/3 of the ground is going to be inhabited by hanger-ons to some degree because they've got nothing to do with the actual two teams that are there. And there will be some people that are rewarded, I suppose, for efforts during the year, but there's got to be a lot of parasites there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my main issue with the whole thing. And you look across the allocation, you see there's like 10,000 for the AFL clubs. You've got up to 26,000 MCC, 23,000 AFL members. You've got your the corporate and entitlements, contractual obligations up to 30,000. Like that's a lot of tickets for the non-members, as you were saying. I'd like to see that entire AFL members up to 23,000 reallocated to the clubs. I think it should be at least half the ground going to the members of the clubs that are actually competing, and then those AFL members can fight with the MCC members for that reserve that they've got there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I reckon it's got to be at least 50% to be fair.
Yeah, it really does. And particularly when you've got two clubs with such large supporter bases like ours, and there's going to be so many people that miss out. I mean, I'm very lucky that I've been financially in a situation being able to pay for a gold membership since 1997. But that means I have sacrificed other things in my life to ensure that, just in the hope that my team makes a grand final. But I know there's other people who are just as passionate about the club, but they can't have that opportunity. For once, my auntie, who's actually coming with us, is so excited because this is going to be her first ever grand final. She's only ever been able to start coming to games for the last 2 years, and she has a gold ticket because it was one of my sisters who now is not interested in going to football. So it's great to see things like that, and people who haven't had that chance get to go and experience this. I mean, I've been very lucky to go to our two previous grand finals, and now I'm going to be at this one. But it's an amazing thing that so many people should have access to.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing is that it just detracts from the occasion. And I went to, and I have to lay claim. I was one of those, inverted commas corporates that went a few years ago as a birthday celebration. It was just something that I wanted to do. So I had seven or eight friends, and we did corporate packages and had a big day and blah blah blah. And the atmosphere is just not the same. And this is it's the actual product, I think. And obviously there's the issue of people not being able to get in, but what it does to the actual product itself, there's just if you ask anybody, there's no way in the world you're going to match the atmosphere that we had on Friday night or that Richmond had on Saturday night. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be a completely different atmosphere, and it is because I think I went to the Fremantle Hawthorn grand final a few years ago, and the atmosphere just wasn't. The game itself just really didn't do that much. I mean, it wasn't a great game, I suppose, in hindsight, but the atmosphere was just not electric. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually wonder whether we will actually see a Twilight Grand Final next year, just purely on the success of that preliminary final game between GWS and the Tigers. And so much of the Melbourne media were there. They all went in and they just have raved about it.
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I do like the Saturday afternoon grand final. That it's played in daylight. There's no chance of a dew, or the ball getting slippery, getting involved in it. Because I think when you play a twilight game, it Not always, but sometimes it's quite possible that during the course of the game you're going to play about 2 or 3 different styles of game to accommodate for the conditions. But and I know that's probably being pedantic, but I'm a traditionalist and I prefer to keep it in the afternoon.
Well, moving on, I've been so hyped up with the ticketing situation over the last few days that I've barely really turned my mind to the actual game itself. And as I thought about doing the potty tonight, I realised that we should sort of devote some time to actually starting to get our heads around the fact that we've got a game of footy on Saturday afternoon. Friday night was such a high. It was such a phenomenal atmosphere. The crowd was the loudest I think I'd ever heard it. It was an amazing night to be at the football.
And they
really
made the Western Stand shake.
Yep.
At the end of so much so that the Channel 7 cameramen were actually reporting back, you need to use other cameras. We can't keep these ones still for a shot.
No, it was a phenomenal night at the football. I think it was probably one of the best times at the football I've ever had, apart from, of course, Phoenix, the 1983 grand final when Westies barnstormed over all your mob. That was a great day at the football, but yeah.
Oh, don't challenge him!
Yeah, I didn't hear that much in 1983, actually. Didn't hear that one very much in 1983, but anyway.
Let's not ever talk about this AFL again.
It was a great night of football. So anyway, moving towards Saturday, I thought we'd spend some time actually talking about the game and selection and dissecting it. Do we see, I guess, at the top of the story, do we see any selection surprises or dramas? I think obviously the cloud is on Mitch McGovern, and from all reports, a bit of a cloud on Hugh Greenwood as well.
Yeah, Greenwood was very disappointing on the weekend. I think that's the first time I've ever said that about his game. So whether he was carrying a calf injury as has been suggested, or whether he just had a rotten one, I don't really know, because he only had 59% game time, and off of memory, it was only 6 or 7 touches for the game, which is and only 2 tackles, which is way below what he normally does. So his output was very, very low. And if he has got an injury, well, obviously you can't take any form of risk. And if he has got an injury, well, then somebody like Millerer or Curtly Hampton would be the 2 boys that would be vying for that one particular spot if he's not available. Mitch McGovern, he's another one in question, and to me, I just think he has to be doubtful. And given the fact that Otten performed satisfactorily last week, and I think is quite capable of performing satisfactorily again, I think that it's certainly no risk should be taken anyhow.
On that Macca for Greenwood, he played mostly played more in the middle in the first 2 quarters. When he first came on, though, he did some great stuff that were the 1%ers that we know he can do. So we got no stats for those, but there was some great little pushes and just body moves and just getting his body in the way, etc., that he did there. In the second half, I only saw him very rarely in the middle. He was used exceedingly sparingly, but we did put him up forward for a spell. So he was used only when we needed guys to have a little bit of a rest. So I think there is a little something that he does have a lower leg injury, don't quite know what it is. On McGovern versus Otten, if McGovern gets through training, McGovern comes in.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nicky, on that one. He's fit, he comes in, and while Otten was, he was serviceable against Geelong and all that sort of stuff, McGovern is simply a better player. He's more electric. He can pull out some tricks, and sometimes you need those sort of tricks to win the grand final. So, yeah, if he's fit, he's coming straight back in for mine. I think even if he's, just maybe slightly off, I think I'd still risk him.
Yeah, I think I'm not arguing about that. I'm saying that the way I'd treat McGovern is that I would put him through a very grueling test in the sense that the test, if he was something wrong with him, that he would break down. I'd rather he break down again and have all summer to recover than for him to take him into the game and get him to break down in the first quarter.
Yeah, no, absolutely no question at all of his past fit he plays. That's not even an issue. So we keep our fingers crossed for more that he gets through, because
See,
we
there's
are
injuries.
definitely a stronger team with him in it.
See, there's injuries on their side as well, because purely you actually have to look at Martin and the hit he got in the ribs. Now, he can play on with that, but he won't be able to have the explosive pace that he normally does have, because you can't breathe properly, and that will affect his performance. And he got another hit when they finally did put him in. So they left him up forward for the majority of the last quarter after he got the knee in the ribs.
He did, yeah.
Then
Do you
he
think- was it-
actually did go into the middle for one centre bounce, and he got a knock on the ribs, and he immediately grabbed at it and had to stop, and they took him off after that.
Correct.
Was it the? Do you think it was the ribs that affected his Brownlow speech? You know, when he was going every time he'd say so. Was that
Or
the
a
ribs?
bit
Do
of
you
nerves as well. I think that might have been,
think?
but also
I don't know what
nerves.
that was, but it was pretty bizarre. It was pretty bizarre, wasn't it? It was like, I don't know whether he was on some. It just seemed like very weird the way that he was going
Well, 'cause
after
other-
every time he spoke.
Yeah, because everybody's talking about how you have painkillers and he won't feel it. That's nice. He won't be able to feel it, but he won't be able to breathe as well as he has normally.
Mm.
So I
Just
think
like-
there's. So to me, that's another little parallel with 1997 that's been going on this week, because Harvey also played with broken ribs, except McLeod broke them in the very first tackle where he took him over the boundary line.
Is it possible that Huey Greenwood was just managed a bit?
I think
Given
it
the
could
way
be.
that the game went and the way that we got out to an early lead, do you think that he was, because there's been a lot of talk about the fact that he doesn't, his fitness isn't where it needs to be, and whether potentially it's not actually an injury per se, but just managing him to get him through, and then thinking that they'll for a big effort on Saturday. Is that possible?
Well, the people that know are suggesting there is a bit of a leg injury there. So, and it might only be a slight one, but it's affecting him slightly anyhow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
think he was probably managed. I mean, you look at his time on ground; it was 59%. It's pretty low, and he didn't seem to cop any injuries during the game. And I think one of the big issues with keeping Greenwood in, is you look at the depth that we've got to replace him. If he actually does go down or is deemed not fit or whatever, and it's bring in Miller or Hampton. I mean, Miller is not exactly the same level of pressure that he'd provide, the same as Greenwood that is, and Hampton hasn't played AFL footy since like round 10 or something. So yeah, I think the options for replacing any of our midfielders isn't particularly good at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were managing him pretty significantly, just so that he can get through these games and provide that second rotation midfield in the grand final, because we really do need him there just to provide that extra depth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I think he's had an outstanding start to his career. I can't think of any other, and although he's not a junior, but he's a junior in terms of playing the game. I can't think of another junior that's been so influential in the early games that he's played, and I'd love him to be able to play his normal game and hope that he can this weekend, because he's got a lot to give.
Well, it's just the grunt that he gives in the clinches, isn't it? I mean, he doesn't, generally speaking, doesn't get a lot of the ball for a midfielder, but it's just that body and grunt and just his taps and kicks off the ground. It just seems to, I don't know, it just seems to be busy in the clinches in the inside of the contest, doesn't he?
Yeah, his physical work rate enables other players to either get a possession or to have a clearer possession at the ball. So I think he's a very valuable player for the side.
In terms of the actual game, number one offense, without wanting to sound like a US bloody gridiron commentator, number one offense versus the number one defense in the competition. An interesting scenario there. Bit of star power for the Tigers. I just get the feeling I've got some worries about the fact that we are away from home. We are playing at the MCG. We have had, we can say we're undefeated at the MCG. We had a good performance against Hawthorn after a very slow start in that game. We just got over Carlton by 12 points. They finished second to bottom. And of course that horror show against Collingwood for half that we sort of managed to reel back into a draw. Not not terribly convincing form at the MCG. And what concerns me a little bit is just the start. And I just get a sense that we just don't, as a general rule, settle particularly well there. And my gut feeling is the way that this game's going to play out is that my gut feeling is that we're going to suck up being 3 to 4 goals down at some point. And I think that might be sort of quarter time-ish. I just get the feeling that Richmond will come out of the blocks. They'll settle into this will be their 3rd game in a row on that ground, and I think they'll settle into a rhythm a little bit more quickly than we will. And I think it will be a matter of making sure that there's not too much damage in that first quarter, that it doesn't get out to 6-7 goals.
You don't reckon nerves trumps that though, PJ?
No,
Peter J. Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I think that I honestly think that Richmond will, just because it's their home ground, because they just know it so well, and they do play the ground pretty well. I just think that they'll settle a bit better than we will, and I just don't think that we don't, for whatever reason. I just think in the back of my mind, I can think of numerous times we just don't seem to start well there, and we don't seem to start well in games in Melbourne.
Yeah, we haven't started well at the Adelaide Oval either, though. I mean, you look at some of our games like Port Adelaide, Sydney. There's a few others I forgot. Even against Richmond, actually, back in round 6. I think the MCG doesn't pose any fears for us. And in all those games that we started poorly, it's not because of the ground or the conditions or the crowd or anything like that. It's just because we rocked up with the wrong mindset. And we saw that many times at home and away. But I think coming into this final series, we've seen 0 of those issues. Like, we have rocked up 100% right in the mind. We've seen that in our anthem stance that people are laughing at, but that's really getting us in the mood to play these games. And I can see us doing the same thing that we did in the qualifying and prelim finals and getting out to a strong lead in the first quarter, not being down, Peter.
Yeah, I'm with Scorpus too. It's coming in standing as we are at the start, and it's that is a mindset. We're establishing a mindset of concentration, focusing. There's the enemy on the other side. We're going to go and we're get them. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. The mind is totally focused, absolutely focused, and some pretty good brains, I think, have thought of this idea and got this going. And I'm sure we'll do that again. And I think Scorpus is right. I'm expecting us to start very well.
I actually think that Richmond are going to be shitting themselves, because deep down, I think you'll find that they understand that they're not as good as Adelaide, and it's going to take Adelaide doing something silly or not starting well for them to be in with a shot. And I think they're going to be nervous as hell, Pete. I think you underestimate the occasion for Richmond, the weight of expectation with all their fans and not having won a grand final for 30 plus years and whatnot.
And
I reckon that's going to weigh heavily on them.
And just to give you some stats, Pete. So the Saints, the round 23 game at the MCG, St Kilda versus Richmond. The opening quarter was 4-2 to 1-2, Richmond's way. So you're correct there. There's 3 goals down. Then you had the qualifying final against the Cats. It was only 2 goals to 4 points.
Yeah, but you're not comparing apples with apples there, Nikki, because you're talking about Geelong.
That's their fast start.
Who play the
fast start was only 2 goals more.
You're not comparing apples with apples. I'm talking about the fact that we're an interstate team that have only played there 3 times this year, and we haven't.
Okay.
In neither
Richmond.
of those games, I mean, in the Hawthorn game, yes, we ran the game out, but you remember that we were asleep for a quarter and we were down at quarter time.
And that was how long ago? And what have we done the last 2 games? And you're saying Richmond get off to a fast start. I'm showing you the past 3 games, they haven't.
I'm giving. You don't have to look. I'm not actually here saying I'm going to vote no to same-sex marriage. I'm just saying that my opinion on this is that I think that they'll get a good start, and I think that we historically don't start particularly well. I mean, look at the Collingwood game. It was just, and I take Scorpus's point that we have started the last 2 games well, and we had some problems with our starts earlier in the year. But
you
historically,
were also basing this,
and I think that we'll struggle. If I could finish, I think that we'll reel them in. I think that over probably the second, third, we'll reel them in, and I'm quite comfortable that we'll win the game. But I just don't think I'm prepared. As a supporter and as a spectator, I'm prepared to be about 3 or 4 goals down at one point.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
sorry, Nick. I'd be very disappointed if that was the case, Pete, because it's going to the start, as always, will depend on who wins the ball out of the centre and who and it's a great impetus to get the ball out the centre and get it rolling down your end and get the ball going. And the way we've been using the ball too, going forward too, has been a treat, and then we've been scoring very, very quickly as a result of that. So if we could get on top early in the middle, and I think that Martin is going to be impeded to some degree, which is going to reduce some of his efficiency. But and I do recognise they've got a good midfield, but we've been playing good midfields and we've been doing well. So it'll depend on that, Pete. If they get on top early in the midfield, well, yes, you could be right. But if we get on top, well, then expect us to be on top.
Well, for me, just watching that GWS Richmond game on the weekend, both teams, you could see that the pressure of the game was actually getting to both of them, and they were making the most ridiculous mistakes. So, and I compare that to the way our boys played and how they came out, Pete. They were just so focused and so sharp. And it was such a marked contrast between the two game styles in terms of the skill and composure. I mean, Geelong weren't just laying down and falling over for us to do whatever we wanted. They were still having a go. And they're probably putting on a little bit more pressure at times than GWS ever did on the opponent, unless I think the Harrison Himmelberg, he was one of the few who was actually willing to do defensive actions for GWS. That's why I don't quite understand your whole thing that you think they'll get off to this fast start. They tried that against GWS, and GWS pulled them back quite easily. It was only 1 goal in it at quarter time.
Yeah, and it's not impossible. It's not impossible for Pete to be right, though.
I'm certainly hoping that it's not the case. As a supporter, I'd much rather just sit there through a 10-goal win. I'd be much happier with that, and I'll enjoy my day quite merrily. That's just my gut feel about how it will play out.
Time, as always, will be the answer, Pete, and the midfields.
I hope I'm wrong. I honestly hope I'm wrong.
And the midfields will be the answer to it too, to some degree. And it's. But I think it. In our case, it's not perhaps quite as important as it would be for Richmond to get away to a fast start, because even when we've started slowly, we've reeled teams in, and I look at Richmond and I'm quite astonished that they've done as well as they have, because I just don't think they have the same equivalent manpower that we do.
Yeah, they really don't, and I think it's partly. It was really key for Richmond to finish top 4, and that was partly because of their quite soft draw that saw them, no really tough double-ups, and a lot of their tougher teams were able to play in the MCG, and they were just lucky enough to finish in a position where they could play a team at their home ground, even though they finished third. So I think that really helped them out to get to the position where they are. Now, I think, of course, any team that makes it to the grand final deserves to be there, so... I'm not counting them out, and there's, certainly were one of the better teams throughout the year. But you're right. You look across their list and the players that they're going to be putting out there, and there are some very, very ordinary depth players out there for Richmond. So if it comes down to those bottom 6 players between Richmond and Adelaide, we absolutely smoke them in that department, in my opinion.
Yeah, and exactly what you said, Scorbus, because when I evaluate the worth of two teams, I always do look at the bottom 6 to 8 players in each team, because you can't hide them. You can't hide them. You can put some on the bench at some time, but sometimes they're going to be out on the ground. So if you've got, and that's one of the Port Adelaide problems, in the fact that they might have a pretty good first 15 players, but after that they get very ordinary, and that's why they are where they are, and that's why other teams are where they are. And then I think Richmond, of the top teams, they do taper away pretty quickly after about, say, number 16, 17 at best.
What's interesting, I think, is the form lines are quite similar. Both teams have played two home finals. Both teams have beaten GWS by 36 points. Richmond beat Geelong by 51. We beat Geelong by 61. So it's a very, very similar form line in terms of playing the other teams in the top 4.
In terms of the final score, then yes, Pete, but the way that both teams have gone about it is actually the reverse. We've gotten away to quite a really good start. We've put on that break. We've got at least 30 points, so 5 goals up, held on to that, and then just slowly peppered away and gotten that little higher in the second half. But we put them away early in the first half. Whereas the Richmond games, they've generally been closer in the start and then they're blown away in the second half. So it's kind of, we've ended up with the same end result, but we've been better at the start and they've been better at the end.
I felt like we actually managed the clock
Yes.
for at least half the game against GWS. Not so much against Geelong, but I felt against GWS we blew them away and then just sat on the clock pretty much. And
Yeah,
even
I
the
agree with
last quarter we did for sure. We didn't kick a goal in the last quarter.
well, even in the third quarter, just the style we were playing was all about possession and there wasn't any fast movement. It was a complete contrast to the first quarter and a bit. And even the Geelong game, I felt like we always had a bit in reserve, and every time they pushed, we were able to push back. I think the one thing you were talking about, the bottom 6 for Richmond, the one thing that they can do is bring pressure. They're not great skilled and, they're not highly talented players, but they contribute to this whole ethos of Richmond's of applying pressure. And I think that's probably one of the keys to our winning this game is being able to maintain our high disposal efficiency under what you would expect to be a greater amount of pressure particularly early in the game, when the heat is really on. It'll be our ability to maintain composure and keep our disposal efficiency up to a decent level, and then obviously force their turnovers, which we're so potent at. If we start turning the ball over under the heat that Richmond are going to apply, then that's where, Pete, you might be right. We might be in some early strife.
For
I
me,
think a bit of their pressure is just a little bit overrated. I think if you're watching the Richmond versus GWS game, GWS they did manage to get the ball pretty cleanly and easily at a number of times and sort of not succumb to that Richmond pressure, but they just made some really awful decisions under pretty much no pressure. They were sort of working the ball out into the open side of the MCG or through the corridor like, GWS can do, and then just, turning it over on the half-forward line to just making the worst possible uncontested decisions. And I can't see us doing the same thing. And you even look at the stats and you see that GWS had more inside 50s. If Richmond are letting us have more inside 50s than them, they're going to be in for a world of hurt.
I can't disagree with what you're saying there, Scott, because I think you're right on the money. And they have their whole success is based around those lesser players earning their keep by applying pressure. But having said that, it's still not infallible because, as Scorpus said, I thought the GWS had a world of opportunities, but used the ball very, very poorly. And the other thing too, I thought their forward line, instead of spreading, they clustered too often too, which falls right into the hands of the defensive team. So and to players like Rance. So to me, I thought in some ways GWS blew their opportunities to win that game early when they did have opportunities.
I think you've got to pay Richmond some respect. They're the number one defensive team in the league, so they've obviously got, they've got something going for them in that respect, and there obviously is something to the, the pressure side of their game. So I think you do have to give them some respect, and the fact that they've made it hard for, most. I mean, the mid-league, when we played them, I think we won by 12 goals, but certainly the first quarter was pretty scary. We didn't look like it, and I guess Scorpus, you're right. That's another one of our poor starts way back when. So you do have to give them some respect, though.
Well, the other thing is, if you don't respect your opponent in any game, you can possibly lose the game. You've always got to give them total respect. It doesn't matter who you're playing, and when you're playing in a grand final, you always got to treat it as if you're playing a superb side, and that you must give your utmost at every opportunity and make the most of the ball you've got. You can't afford to lairize or to go half-hearted or anything like that. It's a grand final, for God's sake. So there's a huge thing at stake. And, and although that they may perhaps be less a man than ourselves, they'll be 100% going 100%. But I have utmost faith in our coaching team. They've got this team going harder than I've seen a Crows team go for many, many a long year. And I don't know what the other people think, but when you got David McCabe risking his body, life and limb to win the ball and playing beautiful football, they've really got through to the players that the need what they have to do to win the game. And if they apply themselves as they have been and put their whole body on the line like they have, e.g. like Sloane, with that head-on collision with Dangerfield, etc., one lies there like a bag of shit and the other one gets up and runs around and keeps on playing. But I just think that our mindset's very good, and if we can reproduce that mindset again, will be very, very difficult to beat.
Do we think that we will see Knight picking up Cochin after the centre bounce, like he's been doing with Selwood, etc.? Because I think Cochin's the one you really need to focus on stopping. Well,
I would think you're 100% right there. I don't know that Martin's whether it's possible to stop Martin. If he's 100% fit and running around, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop him. Although, and interesting enough, they were talking about that on 5AA, and one of the commentators raised the point, which is, I thought, quite a good one. Rather than trying to grab him and getting a great big fist in the chest and making yourself look a little bit silly, perhaps just try and corral him so that he's got nowhere to go and that he has to dispose of the ball in a hurry.
Which is what we did against him in the round 6 game.
Right. Well, then I thought that made perfect sense, actually, because just watching him, many times this year, I've just marvelled at his ability to just, even if there might be, sometimes it's up to 2 to 3 of the opposition team trying to tackle him, he just makes it look stupid at times, just the way he just pushes them away, and he's a very strong boy. So, yeah, I think perhaps that is a much better way of handling him to reduce his efficiency and his effectiveness. And as you say, I think Riley Knight on Cochin, and I loved the way that Knight got into Selwood. It was some good physical stuff there as well, I thought. And
I love the way they got into Dangerfield at the start too. Did you see Matt Crouch into Dangerfield? Boy, he was vicious.
Yes, he does not like him. There's quite a number of our boys that are very, very dirty on Danger, and were quite uncomplimentary to him at the last game. So I think he's still friends with that small group, that close friends that he still was, but the rest of the playing group are very, very dirty on him. But you could also tell that our entire team did not respect Selwood one instance, but we did have a little bit of form going there because he eye-gouged Knight last game.
He did.
And nothing ever happened about it. And we were very much in the mindset of we owe you back for that, but we're going to do it within the rules. But we're going to make the game very uncomfortable for you to play against us.
Aside from it, was a good point that you raised, Nicky, about Riley Knight. Do you think there's any other defensive aspects to our game plan, in the sense that any other roles for anybody? In particular, I was thinking Rance. Is anybody going to, do you think, look at trying to perhaps get Rance out of the play a little bit, or do you think that we just back the fact that we're such an overpowering, offensive side that we just play our own game?
Yeah, I think we back him in. Because you see our tall forward line, and we've got, especially if McGovern plays, we're going to have so many options down there: Walker, Jenkins, Lynch, Gov. We all know the players that are going to be down there, and it's very different to the opponents that Richmond have played in these two finals. Geelong have shit all tall forwards, and they dropped Menzel for that game as well, so they really screwed themselves over on that one. Then in GWS's case, it was Patton and Himmelberg, and that was about it up forward for them. So I think Rance has really struggled playing against us in the past, simply because we've got so many of those taller options, and he'll be forced to play one-on-one where he's not particularly strong in, especially if he has to play on Walker. So I'd just be chucking our talls down there and playing our structures as we usually do, and I would expect that because of their lack of height down there, that they'll have to put Rance on someone.
Our tall forwards against Geelong, though, had a very specific game plan because they were there, and Otten did great at it, and Jenkins and Walker were doing exactly the same things. They were there to counteract the intercept defenders that Geelong have that have killed us in the past, which is why our small forwards and medium forwards actually came into play so much. And our midfielders then pushed down a lot more into the forward line, and even you had Jacobs doing so. So I wonder whether it'll be a similar thing against Richmond, because they also do have some good intercept marks. But it's kind of funny that we rarely actually do see Rance play on Walker, because
Yeah,
Walker
doesn't he?
Walker does
Not-
give him a bath. They've actually put Rance on bets before because they don't want him on Walker.
You're
Yeah,
right,
dumb
Nick. In fact, I heard him talking, and he said that he doesn't normally take Walker, that he normally takes someone else in the forward line. And,
Yeah, Jenkins or somebody, and Asprey comes in. And the thing is, who are they going to put on Lynch? And I've seen the matchups with Hawley. Now, Hawley, yeah, he's got a great aerobic capacity, but can he really go with Lynch?
No.
No, I don't think so. Just talking about Asprey, he did hurt his shoulder at one stage, his right shoulder, and went off the ground. They took him downstairs to examine, etc. So he'd be under a little bit of an injury cloud, or a little bit susceptible to a nice, great big bump on that shoulder.
Do we think that Richmond are going to put more time into curbing our rebound off halfback? I noticed that Geelong spent a lot of time blocking Lever's run at the contest to try and minimise his effect at third up and intercept, but they didn't really pay a great deal of attention to Lairdy. Do you reckon that maybe one of the keys for Richmond is to actually hard tag a couple of our rebounding defenders rather than spend too much time worrying about our forward line?
That's their game plan. And they have a very small forward line, and they've only got really one and a bit tall players, in the sense they've got Rewald at full forward, and Townsend, who I think from GWS generally plays on a flank and moves around between the pocket and the flank. And the other three forwards, four forwards, are all little guys, and their whole one, apart from the opportunities to kick the opportunist goal, one of their main role is really to create those opportunities by pressure on the backmen to make them either beat them for the ball, but if they've got the ball, to put pressure on so they can't dispose of it efficiently. So that's going to be one of the things that we're going to have to overcome, because we will have a much taller defence in their forward line. So there has to be certain adjustments made there by the players in the way that they play.
I think, Fane, that they, as Macca just said, that it's pretty much their game plan anyway. Is to bring that sort of high defensive pressure to the opposition defence and try and play the game in that half of the field. So I think the short answer to your question is I think that they will, but I think that probably accords with the game plan that they generally play, without it being a specific sort of a targeted aspect of it.
And they really like to run the ball in as well. You know, they like to. They know they're going to be done for height up there, so they don't like to kick it long and high into the forward line. They prefer to use all their small players to run in throughout that half forward line and sort of get their shots that way. I think it will be really key for us to keep our zone nice and proper, and making sure that we're not getting sucked into that sort of movement, and just make sure that they can't execute those sort of really easy and unpressured either runs or handballs, kicking whatever, into sort of the 40 metres out directly in front sort of zone where they've been quite successful at scoring from. I think we'll have to, if our midfield especially, if they can pressure Richmond into kicking long and high, I think they've got pretty much no hope of kicking a score on us. And if they're trying to, hard tag a Laird or a Seedsma or a Lever or someone, I still think if we're marking it in there as opposed to having to scrap for ground balls or whatever, that we have the personnel and the skill back there to distribute quite effectively from a marking situation. So it'll be all about winning it at the ground and hopefully being able to withstand some of their pressure and just almost do like we did against Geelong, and sort of hit up those short passes and handballs throughout the half back and not get not get sucked into making the wrong choices coming out of there.
Yep, agree with that. During the week, I heard one of our backmen, and I think it was Talia. I may be wrong, but I think it was Talia saying that that they will be playing against a very different kind of forward line, and you know, the commentator was suggesting that we may have trouble with them, and he said, "Look, no, we won't because they were talking about mismatches in terms of height and speed and all the rest of it." And Talia said, you know, that while we would have an advantage there, the fact that the ball hits the ground, that didn't worry him either, because of the fact that we play a team defence and he said a zone defence where everybody knows their role, he said, so that won't matter to us what height they are. We still have to play the same way because it works.
And we don't
Very good
panic. We don't, if that ball comes down, Macca, because everybody knows their role, where they're supposed to go, we don't panic so much. But also our defenders are so keen at actually getting in the face of the forwards. So whilst that's such a highlight for that Richmond forward line and the pressure that they do, which is quite well, for GWS defenders weren't putting any pressure back on them. If they got bumped off the ball, they just lay there and watched one of their teammates then get poleaxed again. Whereas we saw a number of times that we had double tackles going on. We had one of our players get knocked over and then they were struck involved in the play if it was near them and they were the next man up. That's the way our defence plays as a little team. And they don't panic if there's a mismatch. You know, they'll just wait till they can get the right swap and they can swap back again, then they'll do it. And they'll spot if somebody else, they're yelling at the other teammates to get where they need to go. It's a fascinating team to watch that team within a team operate.
All right. What are we? Final thoughts and tips and margins from everybody.
I'm actually being perhaps. I hope I'm not being overconfident, but I'm thinking that we'll win 6 to 7 goals.
For me, I kind of sit around the 5 goal mark. That's you would, 2 minutes. If you're 5 goals up, okay, I feel comfortable now that we might win this.
Scorpus?
I reckon we're going to be 25 to 30 points up at quarter time, and I reckon we'll get out to a 60 to 70 point win.
Wow.
Oh God, that would be nice.
That'd be a nice way to spend my Saturday afternoon.
I reckon we are a lot better than Richmond, and we'll show them that on Saturday.
Perfect. I think we'll, as I said, I stand by my gut feel that it'll be a case of reeling them in, but I think that we will, and I think that we'll. I just have a funny feeling it'll play it a little bit similar to the Hawthorn game we had earlier in the year. And I think that we'll eventually push out to somewhere between a 24 to 28 kind of a point margin. That's where it sits for me. Nikki, Fane, have we got a little bit of cockbomble music there to wrap up the show?
Yeah, and P.S. I'm with Scorpus. I think it's going to be a right royal thumping.
Mate. I forgot you were there.
Yeah, bastard. Hang on. Just to remind you.
Oh, no.
Pete!
No, I did it again.
Do I give Pete a cockwobble nomination for making me play that 3 times?
You should have deserved it.
Sorry, mate.
Nominating himself.
I reckon
that's back-to-back nominations for Pete. Sorry, Fane.
I reckon we'll belt them, to be honest. I reckon it's going to be a close to a 118 thrasher. We won't beat them by more than 118 because we wouldn't want to take Port's thunder in terms of their highest losing margin, but I think it's going to be an absolute thumping because I think we're just simply a better team. And it's not often I'm that confident, is it?
No, that's scary.
Definitely not. Mate, the last time you were that confident was tipping North Melbourne to beat us down in Tasmania, so I'm pretty comfortable with where you're at.
Anyway.
Or do we just blame it on the drugs?
Yeah, blame the drugs.
Yeah, do that.
Cockwomble.
Underground, overground, wombling free.
I'm going to start off with Bruce McAvaney last night for asking the crowd to acknowledge that Dangerfield came second. Have we ever had the acknowledgement of a player who came second in a Brownlow before?
Well, I no, I
Was
don't
that,
know.
Was that Bruce or was that the
Or was it the announcer?
It was the
It was the
announcer.
board.
Oh,
No, it was the AFL executive commissioner or whatever the hell his name is when he came out and made his speech.
Yeah.
He said, "We just want to acknowledge Paddy Dangerfield's season."
I'm sorry. Are we no longer the AFL with the PDFL?
We are the PBFL. We all know that.
Yes.
And
Well,
Nikki-
actually, that is correct because there is also the lovely journalist who wrote the big article on Tuesday about how the pain of losing the prelim might mean that Paddy won't go to the grand final. Well, he didn't
Wow.
earn the right to be there, so
I don't really care what Patrick does. You go and catch fish, go
Yeah,
fishing
well,
if
you
you
know
like
what?
it.
What will be happening on Saturday is the Rule Men will be playing an AFL Grand Final, and Paddy will be being dragged around IKEA.
that's where you go to watch couples break up. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
That's what
he'll
will be
get
happening.
knocked over by a kid in the shopping aisle and take 20 minutes to get up.
Leading into that, I would like to throw a Cockwomble nomination at the Geelong medical staff because he was knocked out. His arms do not go in that. His hands do not go in that forward position lying down
Nah.
unless you're knocked out. Well, they did not even do a concussion test on
Nah,
him.
he wasn't knocked out, Nick.
Nah, Nick, he put his head. I saw his head bob up there with squizzy to see everybody was watching.
No, that was a bit later, Macca.
Nah,
nothing to
Nicky,
see.
That
Nothing
first
to
hit,
see.
Nicky,
he went
I
completely
actually,
limping
Nicky,
down.
I actually
Move on.
watched it today, and
Oh, they
I
had
noticed,
form though.
I noticed what Macca said. He wasn't knocked out at all. He was just lying on the ground, spread eagled. It's as simple as that. He's a soft cock.
There's
Yeah,
just,
soft
I reckon
cock.
that's 5 minutes of our podcast devoted to Paddy Dangerfield, and
Yeah.
that's
So it's
5
going.
minutes
Enough.
too much. So,
So
there's
you're
a
going to
rule
enjoy
now:
this,
is
Pete?
any other nominations cannot
going to
involve
enjoy
Paddy
this?
Dangerfield in any way.
I
Put
haven't-
Adelaide in
yes.
the SNFL for losing by 1 point.
No, that's praiseworthy.
Which then led to Chad Corns for a while actually refusing to go into the Sturt rooms. He did apparently eventually go in there. He then refused to talk to the media after the game because he was such a sore loser. And today, when they did the unfurling at the brewery, they sent along their media guy.
It's actually disgraceful.
Absolutely and utterly disgraceful.
Have
Like,
another sorry, I got to have another nomination. Brian Taylor for I don't know what he knows about Lever's private life, but he did accuse him of being the best fister in the game.
Oh dear.
He
Moving-
also
moving on from that
Brian
one,
Brian Taylor also ruined that great mark of Charlie Cameron because he was too busy talking about whatever he wanted to talk about and how important he was, and not actually calling the play as a
Terrible.
commentator should do. And he's
Terrible call to
ruined this fabulous mark because all you've got
Yeah.
is him finishing his sentence of "We don't really care."
Terrible
true.
commentating. My nomination this week is Kevin Bartlett for just carrying on like a silly old man about the Guernsey clash. He was just he made some very, very silly comments, and I think that if he went back and had a look at them, he'd probably be a little bit embarrassed. So I think that
it's not like
as we wrap up,
KB.
I think KB's my nomination.
Not
Yeah,
like
KB
KB
would-
to be embarrassed about anything he's got to say because he's always fucking right.
So
But
winner.
he also does that a little bit though, Peter, just purely to wind up the SEN crowd and get them to call in.
Yeah,
So
probably.
a lot of that is his character that he's
Oh,
playing.
I was
But I-
listening today. Sorry to cut you off, Nick.
That's
I
fine.
was listening today, and Dr. Turf was on with him, and egging him on, and getting callers to egg him on. And they at the end of the segment, they had Kevin's head exploding because they G'd him up so much. So it was quite amusing. But I think you're right, Pete. It's a bit overblown, that whole clash jumper thing.
So there's
Probably.
just
I'm
two
happy.
quick final ones.
Yep.
Dermot Brereton for interviewing Rory Sloane on Triple M Football on Saturday and asking him about how they're going to come back after being defeated by Richmond earlier in the year. And Sloane was like, "What? We won that game." and the rest of his panelists all had a go at Dermot for getting that little fact wrong, which was then followed by Tim Lane in talking with Andrew Fagan and about the Guernsey, etc. And he made the claim that St Kilda were forced to wear their away Guernsey and that Adelaide dictated that and we shouldn't have the right, etc. The president of St Kilda at the time was listening, rang up afterwards and explained that St Kilda themselves offered that. There was no suggestion from Adelaide. Adelaide hadn't even approached them.
No, that's not even it. It's not even it.
Oh, what was it?
St Kilda was using that Guernsey as their home Guernsey that season.
Yeah.
That was their home Guernsey.
Home Guernsey. That's
and
what it was.
St
Yeah,
Kilda, St Kilda had the choice between, or were choosing between wearing their traditional strip or wearing that Guernsey that they'd chosen to wear all season. And they decided to wear that strip because it obviously had been a successful strip for them. So it had nothing to do with Adelaide. It was St Kilda's choice to wear that strip, which they'd been wearing as their home strip all that season.
Yeah, so so there were some nice ones there, but I think personally it has to be Chad Corns for that disgraceful dummy spit. If you're going to be a successful coach, you have to learn how to lose gracefully.
I support that entirely. I was going to jump in just then and say I think that it was pretty clear to me through all of the nominations that Chad Corns was the cockbomble, and I always like to give it to a Port person or entity anyway.
Well,
I
it was
think this
backed up.
might be the first Corns actually that's got it. I think we've
What,
nominated
Kane?
but never won them. Yeah, I don't think Kane's or did Kane win it once
Kane's
last year?
won it. No, Kane's won
Oh, Kane's won it for sure.
it. Yeah, I think he's won
No,
it twice this
I
season.
think Chad.
Kane
No,
also
ha-
backed up Chad on Twitter or an article, or I don't know what the hell it was, about the disparity between the free kicks, which was 21-14, which was probably reasonable considering Sturt was just cracking in and causing stoppage after stoppage. That was their whole tactic, and saying something like, the SANFL need to get their priorities right. And it's like,
I mean, that was disgraceful.
Oh my God.
He was intimating that Port were cheated.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And I watched that game, and there's no way that Port were cheated. It was actually reasonably well umpired under the circumstances, I thought.
Very well
Especially
umpired.
the Corns thing, though. Corns is doesn't matter which of the three of them is. They're always complaining about umpires.
One of the biggest disappointments in my life is that having gotten through the era of Graham Corns in the media, I now have to spend the rest of my fucking life listening to Kane. It pisses me off.
Oh, it's so
All right,
bad.
mate. Well, I think no problem there. We've got Chad Corns as the winner for the cockbomble for this week.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit fuel to the fire. I noticed that after the game, instead of consoling his players, it's standing there walking around and looking like, somebody had stolen all his money or something. He was this sour look on his face. I didn't see him go up and console any of his players like a good coach should, and talk about, you did your best, blah, 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 or anything like that. It's just a sulky little Corns pig that then, which just proved that after what happened after the game. So he doubly deserves it, in my opinion.
Right, beautiful. Time to wrap up the grand final edition of the AFL Crowcast Tuesday Night Live edition, and I think, and if anyone corrects me, I think this is certainly my last podcast for the year. So it's been another terrific year, one that I've enjoyed incredibly, and really, really enjoy working with you guys. It's been a brilliant year. It's always good fun, and hope all the people that listen out there have enjoyed it.
I'm
And,
sure we'll be
I-
doing more Tuesday Night Lives, Pete.
Oh, do you think, after Granny?
Yeah, we've got draft
well, you
week
just-
and all that sort of crap going on.
Well, there you go. Oh, of course, yeah, I suppose so.
Come on, mate.
All right, well, you've knocked me over. I'll just take all that back. You've just killed me there. Don't
This is
play that
this
song.
is the last main season one.
The last main season one. So anyway, thanks everyone for all your support, and good luck to the Crowies obviously on Saturday. And if you were lucky, there we go. If you were lucky enough to get tickets to the game, congratulations. Hope you have a great time on Saturday. and we're going to go out because I can't
And
cope with
Phoenix,
that. I'm logging off.
what about your sign-outs, Phoenix?
Yeah, quick sign outs, Fang. Quick.
Can he breathe? Is he
Or
like
not.
Dusty?
Oh no, he's gone.
He passed away.
Alrighty.
Oh no, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself because I've been muting myself so you don't hear me coughing my guts up. Yeah, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at AFL Crowcast. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a comment and a rating. Helps us with our standings there. And Scorpus and I will be on Thursday night with the final teams and the preview of the big match. And then now, you guys, Nikki and Macca, are we going to be around for the Sunday evening wrap?
I will certainly be around.
I'll let you know what time we're planning to drive home.
We will have a wrap show at some stage, at some time. At this stage, it'll be the normal time. If there's any changes, we will drop a note in on all our outlets. So keep an eye out for that. That's
And
it.
also your bedtime prayer, so that it's going to be a very happy rap show.
We hope so.
Happy wrap.
Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate your all your support, and thanks for a great potty. And we'll catch everybody the next time round. Cheers.
Night all.
Good night.
Yeah,
all.
later.
Night, guys.